He's one of the most recognizable faces on American television. Millions see him smile every single day, but almost nobody knows he once cried himself to sleep inside a car. This is a man who turned laughter into a full-blown empire. Tailored suits, viral motivation clips, a billion-dollar brand, the whole package. But behind the cameras and all that swagger lies a story built on straight-up poverty, deep silence, and years spent completely alone. So how does a man go from washing up in gas station sinks to commanding the biggest stages on the planet? What does it really cost to chase a dream so massive it rips your life apart? And when the whole world is finally watching you, what happens if you mess up just once? Before we answer any of that, we've got to rewind to the boy who wrote one simple line on a piece of paper: "I want to be on TV." Broderick Stephen Harvey was born in 1957 in Welch, West Virginia, a place where the mountains were steep, the air was thick with cold dust, and your future was usually decided by how much rock you could shovel. It was a tough world, built on the backs of men like Jesse Harvey. Steve's father, Jesse, was a coal miner, a man of iron will and very few words. He spent his days deep underground, breathing darkness so his family could live in the light. Jesse didn't make millions. He made $5 a day. But what he gave Steve was the real currency of manhood. He taught him you show up, you do the work, and you don't complain. No excuses. His mother, Eloise, was the softness to Jesse's steel. She was a Sunday school teacher who filled the house with gospel and gratitude. She taught Steve how to pray, a lesson that would later save his life when he had nothing left but a prayer. But even though the home was full of love, the world outside was a straight-up battlefield for young Steve. And his biggest enemy wasn't poverty or racism, even though those shadows were always there. His greatest enemy lived in his own throat. Steve Harvey, the man known today for his sharp wit and lightning-fast comebacks, was born with a severe, debilitating stutter. Imagine having a mind that moves at 100 miles an hour, packed with jokes, observations, and brilliance, but a mouth that can't get past the first syllable. For young Steve, speaking was pure torture. Every sentence was a minefield. Words like hello or present felt like mountains he had to climb while other kids just stood there watching. So he became a master of silence. He learned to listen. He learned to watch people's faces, read their body language, catch every little detail. He developed the observational skills of a hawk, not because he wanted to be funny, but because he was just trying to survive without speaking. But childhood cruelty hits hard. The neighborhood kids even gave him a nickname, Vieva Vievum. They laughed when he tried to say vanilla at the deli counter. That shame became a heavy coat he wore everywhere. And then came the moment that almost crushed his spirit completely, the dream killer. In 6th grade, his teacher gave the class a simple assignment. Write down what you want to be when you grow up. Most boys wrote policeman, fireman, or farmer, practical dreams, safe dreams. But Steve felt something different. Even locked behind that stutter, he felt a pull toward the screen. He'd watched the few variety shows on their small TV, completely mesmerized by people who could make a room full of strangers laugh. So with a trembling hand, he wrote, "I want to be on TV." When the teacher called him to the front, it wasn't to praise him. It was to humiliate him. She looked at the paper, then at him, then at the class. "Why would you write something like this?" she asked, her voice dripping with condescension. "Do you know anyone on TV? Do you have family in Hollywood? You are a colored boy from West Virginia who can't even talk. Who do you think you are?" The class exploded in laughter, the kind of laughter that sticks with you for 50 years. It was a public execution of a dream. She told him to take the paper home and rewrite it with something realistic. Broken, Steve went home, but he didn't rewrite it. He showed it to his father. Jesse Harvey looked at the paper, then at his son's tear-streaked face. He didn't laugh. He didn't tell him to be a miner. He simply said, "Put that paper in your drawer. Every morning you wake up, look at it. Don't you let nobody tell you what you can't be." That paper stayed in the drawer, but the road to the screen was nowhere in sight. The family eventually moved to Cleveland, Ohio, trading coal mines for steel mills. But a new city didn't mean new luck. The stutter eventually faded, conquered thanks to a deli counter clerk who forced him to slow down and breathe. But directionlessness took over. He tried college at Kent State and flunked out. He worked at a Ford assembly line, tightening screws all day like a flesh-and-bone robot, and got fired. He sold insurance. He sold carpet. He worked as a mailman. By his mid-20s, Steve Harvey wasn't a star. He was a drifter, a man with a magnetic personality but zero purpose. He was the funny guy at the barbershop, the one killing it in the break room, but going absolutely nowhere. He was married, trying to support a family, but crushed by the weight of mediocrity. He was 27 years old. In entertainment, that's ancient. Most stars are discovered at 15 or 18. Steve was pushing 30, working odd jobs, his hands rough like his father's, but his heart empty. He didn't know it yet, but he was standing on the edge of a cliff. The jump was coming. Before he could jump, though, he had to find the stage, and finding that stage would cost him everything. It started with a dare. A friend told him, "You're funny. You should try stand-up." Steve had never even been inside a comedy club. He didn't know how to write a set. He didn't know timing or hecklers, but he had that paper in his drawer and a lifetime of observations from years of silence. He walked onto the stage at Hilarity's Comedy Club in Cleveland. The lights hit him, and for the first time in his life, none of it mattered. Not the stutter, not the poverty, not the teacher who said he was nothing. He grabbed the mic and went to work. They say the road to hell is paved with good intentions, but the road to Hollywood is often paved with hunger. In October 1985, Steve Harvey made the decision that shattered his life before rebuilding it. He won an amateur night. He tasted applause. And in a moment of pure insanity, or maybe destiny, he quit his job. He had a wife. He had twin daughters. He had responsibilities. But he also had a fire in his gut whispering, "This is it." He walked away from a paycheck to chase a dream that promised him absolutely nothing. And almost instantly, the world checked him. Comedy gigs were random. The pay was disrespectful. $50 here, $25 there. Not enough to keep the lights on. Definitely not enough to feed a family. Tension at home exploded. Arguments about money turned into silence, and silence turned into separation. His marriage collapsed under the weight of ambition. Suddenly, Steve Harvey was alone. No wife, no kids, no house. Just a small bag of clothes and a 1976 Ford Tempo. Homelessness doesn't hit all at once. It's a slow erosion of dignity. First a week in a motel he couldn't afford. Then one night in the car. Then two. Then 3 brutal years, 1986, 1987, 1988. While the world watched The Cosby Show and danced to Michael Jackson, Steve Harvey lived inside a metal box. That Ford Tempo was his bedroom, kitchen, and closet. He built a survival system. An igloo cooler in the back seat became his fridge, bologna, water, ice. If he got a gig, he ate fast food. If not, bologna sandwiches. Hygiene became a mission. He memorized gas stations with single bathrooms he could lock. He'd strip down, wash his armpits and groin with harsh pink soap, dry off with rough paper towels, and shave in the rearview mirror, praying nobody knocked. And then he'd put on a suit. That was the mind-breaking paradox. Every night, he had to walk on stage looking like success. He had to project confidence. He had to be Steve Harvey, the funny man. He'd have 200 people laughing so hard their ribs hurt, soaking up that love for a solid 45 minutes. But the second the show wrapped and folks headed back to their warm beds, Steve slipped out the back, climbed into his ice-cold car, drove to some pitch-dark rest stop, leaned the seat back, and just sat there. The quiet after the applause was loud as hell. Out on that highway, he was basically a ghost. He took gigs anywhere, ragged dives in Florida, dusty honky-tonks in Tennessee. If there was a mic and $10 on the table, he was pulling up. One night still burns brighter than the rest in the story of his struggle. A gig in Florida. He'd been driving for hours on fumes, straight up stealing gas, fill up and dip, because he literally had 0 cents to his name. He rolled up to the club starving, exhausted, and desperate. He did the show. He murdered it. Crowd loved him. Afterward, he went to the promoter to get paid. He needed that money to eat. He needed it to make it to the next town. The promoter looked him dead in the eye and said, "I can't pay you tonight. Come back next week." Steve just stood there, that pricey suit hanging loose on his skinny frame, his stomach tied in knots. He couldn't scream, couldn't swing. He just nodded, walked back to the Ford Tempo, and broke down crying. Later he said, "I sat in that car and cried so hard I couldn't breathe. I said, God, if you're real, you gotta get me out of this. I can't do this no more. I'm trying to be somebody. Why is it this hard?" That was rock bottom, a dark night of the soul, where quitting starts sounding sweet and tempting. He could have gone back to the factory. He could have begged for his old job. He could have admitted that teacher was right, that a kid from West Virginia had no business dreaming this big. But something held him back. Maybe it was remembering his dad's toughness. Maybe it was that paper sitting in the drawer. Or maybe it was realizing he'd already lost damn near everything. He couldn't afford to stop now. The only way out was straight through. So he kept driving. 3 winters where that car felt like a freezer. 3 summers where it turned into an oven. He stole fuel. He lived off strangers' kindness and a straight-up refusal to die. He was sharpening his craft in the fire. The jokes got tighter. His read on human nature got deeper. He wasn't just telling jokes anymore. He was preaching survival. When he talked about pain on stage, people laughed, but they felt it too. They rocked with him because he wasn't talking down from some pedestal. He was talking up from the bottom. Then, late 1989, the phone rang. Not family. Not a bill collector. A casting director from a show called Showtime at the Apollo. They needed a host. Steve didn't have money for a plane ticket. Didn't have cab fare. But he knew, deep in his gut, this was the door. Miss this, and he'd die in that Ford Tempo. He borrowed money. He begged. He scraped his way to New York. He walked onto the Apollo stage, the toughest room on earth, where legends are born and average gets booed off in seconds. He looked at the crowd. They looked back at him. He took a breath, and for the first time in 3 years, that Ford Tempo felt a million miles away. The homeless man was about to turn king. Harlem, New York, 125th Street, the Apollo Theater. In comedy, this place ain't just a venue. It's a gladiator pit. Sacred ground where legends like Richard Pryor and Moms Mabley stood, but also a graveyard where weak careers get buried. The Apollo crowd doesn't clap politely. If they don't like you, they boo. They yell. They call for the Sandman to sweep you off the stage in straight-up shame. In 1993, Steve Harvey walked into that lion's den. He wasn't just doing a set. He was auditioning to replace Mark Curry as host. Hosting Showtime at the Apollo meant you weren't just talent. You were the ringmaster. You had to control the crowd, the band, the madness. He walked out, suit crisp, still clinging to dignity even when life had stripped him of it. He grabbed the mic, and all that Ford Tempo pain flipped into power. He owned the room, roasted hecklers, charmed the women in the front row. He wasn't asking permission. He was telling them he belonged. He got the job. And for 7 years, Steve Harvey became the face of black comedy in America. The Apollo brought steady money, the first real check he'd seen in forever. The car was gone, replaced by a home. But Steve knew the game. In Hollywood, hosting is silver, sitcoms are gold. In 1996, the WB rolled the dice on him. The Steve Harvey Show. Simple setup. Former funk legend Steve Hightower becomes a high school music teacher on Chicago's West Side. It wasn't just TV, it was culture. For 6 seasons, Steve and Cedric the Entertainer brought real, rhythm-soaked comedy into millions of homes. While Friends and Seinfeld owned mainstream ratings, the Steve Harvey Show was a straight-up monster in African-American households. Steve was finally somebody. TV show, money, respect. Still, he wasn't satisfied. He looked around comedy and saw a gap. Rock stars filled arenas. Rappers packed stadiums. But comics? Clubs and theaters. Steve wanted to flip the numbers. Crazy idea. Put the 4 biggest voices in comedy together. Steve Harvey as host. D.L. Hughley with the razor-sharp politics. Cedric the Entertainer with the joyful physical comedy. Bernie Mac, raw and fearless. And take it to arenas. Not clubs. Arenas. Promoters laughed. Comedy won't work in a basketball arena. People won't see your face. Some will get lost. Steve and his crew bet on themselves. They called it the Kings of Comedy. It didn't just work, it went nuclear. Highest grossing comedy tour ever. They weren't selling jokes, they were selling an experience. Part family reunion, part church service, part rock concert. Steve was the glue. Host and closer. Rocking suits worth more than the cars he once slept in. Canary yellow, electric blue, big, flowing. Lighting cigars on stage. Holding the mic like a crown. When Spike Lee filmed it in 2000, it locked them in history. Steve's material wasn't about abstract stuff. It was men and women. Church. Growing up broke. He turned his pain into pure gold. One legendary bit. Old school music versus new school rap. Wasn't just funny, it was elite crowd control. 20,000 people, right in his pocket. Steve Harvey had hit the mountaintop. King status. That Ford Tempo was just a bad memory, he told to stay humble. He beat poverty. He beat obscurity. But when the tour ended and the arena lights dimmed, a harsh truth was waiting. Getting to the top is tough. Staying there? That's a whole different fight. The 2000s were rolling in, culture was shifting, and Steve would have to reinvent himself or fade out. The sitcom was ending. The tour was done. And the king was staring down a midlife crisis that threatened everything he'd built. He had money, but he was about to lose direction. In entertainment, you usually get one act. If you're lucky too. Almost nobody gets three. By the mid-2000s, Steve Harvey was rich, famous, respected, and boxed in. Hollywood saw him as the urban comic, the king of comedy. Valuable, but niche. Not the guy to sell soap to middle America. The Steve Harvey Show ended in 2002. The Kings of Comedy had run its course. For most comics, that's the slide. Smaller rooms, old stories, glory day vibes. But Steve Harvey has a different instinct. He knows when the wind shifts. He realized stand-up, the thing that saved him from the Ford Tempo, was now holding him back. The road was brutal. The lifestyle was rough, straight up. And deep down, he knew he had way more to give than just punchlines and laughs. He wanted to talk to people, not talk at them. His first real pivot was radio, the Steve Harvey Morning Show. Radio is personal, real intimate. There's no stage, nowhere to hide. And in those early mornings, that's where a new Steve Harvey started to show up. He wasn't just cracking jokes anymore. He was giving advice. He was talking about relationships, faith, pain, and struggle. Then he noticed something wild. When the phone lines blew up, it wasn't men calling about sports. It was women, thousands of women, asking about their husbands, their boyfriends, their sons. They were asking him, a man with 2 failed marriages, how men actually think. Instead of brushing them off, Steve leaned in and listened. And then he answered with raw, no-filter truth, the kind only someone who lived a hard life could give. One day, a publisher heard those radio segments and said, "There's a book in this." Steve laughed. "Man, I'm not an author," he said. "I barely passed English." But the check cleared, so he sat down and dictated his thoughts anyway. The result was Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Man. That wasn't just a book. It was a cultural nuclear bomb when it dropped in 2009. It didn't just touch the New York Times bestseller list. It camped there for 64 weeks. It got translated into 30 languages. It turned into 2 blockbuster movies. Overnight, Steve Harvey flipped from comedian to full-blown guru. He wasn't just the funny guy anymore. He was the wise uncle, the relationship plug. He cracked a demographic Hollywood swore he'd never reach. Women of every race, every age, every background. That success gave him the leverage to take his biggest gamble yet. In 2010, the producers of Family Feud were desperate. The show was ancient. Decades on air, burned through hosts, and damn near canceled. Ratings were flatlined. The show was boring. They called Steve. His agents told him not to touch it. Game shows are where careers go to die. You're a movie star now. A best-selling author. Why host some dusty old game show? But Steve saw something they didn't. He saw a stage with no script. He took the job, with one condition: I'm doing it my way. Before Steve, Family Feud was polite. Hosts smiled, kept it moving. Steve turned it into a stand-up special. When a contestant gave a wild, ridiculous answer, Steve didn't just say "survey says." He froze the whole show. He roasted them. He stared straight into the camera, broke the fourth wall, and shared that silent, "What the hell was that?" moment with folks at home. He made the host the star. The results? Ratings didn't just improve, they quadrupled. Family Feud became the #1 syndicated show on TV, beating Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy! Clips of Steve's reactions went viral on YouTube, pulling in millions of young people who never even heard of the Kings of Comedy. Now he was everywhere. Radio in the morning. The Steve Harvey Show in the afternoon. Family Feud at night. Dude was grinding non-stop, the hardest working man in show business. He upgraded the look to match the empire. The high-top fade was gone, replaced by a bald head that screamed boss moves. The baggy zoot suits got swapped for custom silks and wools. He looked like a CEO. He looked like money. By 2015, Steve Harvey was untouchable. A global brand. He crossed over, reinvented himself, and stacked a fortune so big the coal mines of West Virginia felt like a whole other lifetime. But the higher you climb, the thinner the air gets, and the more eyes are locked on you. waiting for you to slip. Steve had beaten poverty. He beat the industry. But a test was coming that money couldn't fix. He was about to mess up on the biggest stage on the planet. Literally, and the world would not be kind about it. December 20th, 2015. Las Vegas. Steve Harvey stands on a stage watched by nearly 500 million people worldwide. This was supposed to be his victory lap. Comedy, radio, daytime TV, game shows, conquered. Hosting Miss Universe was the crown jewel, the global flex that sealed his legacy as the ultimate MC. The night was smooth. He was funny, charming, fully in control. Then came the final moment. Two women stood before him, Miss Colombia and Miss Philippines. The tension was crazy. Steve held a small white card. He looked at it, then at the camera, and said the words that would haunt him forever. And the new Miss Universe is Miss Colombia. Backstage, chaos exploded. Wrong name. Wrong name. Steve later called it a death sentence. He had two options. Let the show end, let it cut to black, and fix it off stage, save face, dodge the firing squad. But Steve Harvey, son of a coal miner, a man who learned integrity on Cleveland's hard streets, knew he couldn't do that. He walked back out. "I have to apologize," he said. The audience gasped. You could hear it. The shock was physical. The first runner-up is Miss Colombia. The camera cut to Miss Philippines, confused. Then to Miss Colombia, crushed. The crown was taken off one head and placed on another. For minutes of the most painful live TV ever. The backlash was nuclear. Steve wasn't just mocked, he was hunted. Death threats. Effigies burned in Colombia. The internet, the same beast that helped build him, turned savage. For 48 hours, he was the most hated man alive. The world's punchline. He went back to his hotel room and sat in the dark. It felt like the Ford Tempo days all over again. Alone, isolated, watching everything crumble from one mistake. He looked at the card again. Small font. Confusing layout. But he refused to blame it publicly. "I own it," he said. "I'm the man on the mic." Most careers would have died right there. Shame usually kills the comeback. But Steve did something different. He didn't hide. Weeks later, he was joking about it. He roasted himself in a Super Bowl commercial. He brought Miss Colombia onto his talk show for a real, emotional reconciliation. He turned disaster into a lesson in accountability. He survived. Miss Universe even signed him to a multi-year deal to return. The world was still watching, but the armor had cracks. Then, 2 years later, another one showed up. In 2017, a confidential memo Steve sent to staff at his Chicago talk show leaked. The tone was blunt, no sugarcoating it. No meetings in his dressing room. No popping in. Don't approach him in makeup. Don't wait in the hallway. All ambushing stops now. Media went nuts. They called him a diva, a tyrant, a man who forgot his roots. Too good to talk to his own staff, headlines screamed. But for Steve, it wasn't ego, it was survival. He was filming multiple shows a day, flying non-stop, every second of his life booked and drained by others. That dressing room was the one place he could sit quietly, pray, and recharge before giving himself to millions again. He stood on it. "I don't apologize," he said. "I needed boundaries. I was being eaten alive." Still, the damage stuck. The friendly uncle image took a hit. It was proof that the higher you go, the more people feel entitled to you. And the moment you push back, you're the villain. The Miss Universe mistake and the memo scandal exposed the savage truth of modern fame. You can uplift millions, build schools, feed families, but mess up once, and the world is ready to bury you. Steve Harvey was back at a crossroads. Industry whispers said he was done, overexposed, washed. But they forgot who he was. They forgot the stutter. Forgot the Ford Tempo. You can't break a man who's already been broken and rebuilt himself tougher. So instead of retreating, Steve did what he always does. He pivoted. If American media wanted to tear him down, he'd look beyond America. He'd lean into faith and step into a new role, the philosopher. He was about to deliver a message bigger than any joke he ever told. He was about to talk about the jump. And here's the cruel irony of Steve Harvey's life. This was the man who wrote the book on relationships. The man millions of women trusted for love advice, for building a happy home. Yet for the first half of his life, his own home was a straight-up disaster zone. Success is a jealous mistress. She wants all your time, all your energy, and most of the time, she takes the people you love as payment. Steve's first marriage to Marcia Harvey started way before the fame, back when he was selling insurance in Ohio, just trying to get by. They had twin daughters, Brandy and Carly, and a son, Broderick. They were a regular family, nothing flashy. But when Steve decided to chase comedy, when he chose the road life, the clubs, and that Ford Tempo, he didn't just quit a job. Nah, he left them. He made it make sense in his own head. He told himself he was doing it for them. "I'm gonna make it big so you never have to worry," he'd say. But kids don't want a check in the mail. They want their dad. The marriage fell apart in 1994. The distance was too much. The early years of struggle and being broke slowly ate away at what they had built. Steve was finally coming up in the comedy world, but he was doing it solo. The guilt of leaving his kids behind became a shadow that walked with him onto every stage. Later, he admitted, "I was trying to build a future for them, but I missed their past." Then came the second marriage, to Mary Shackelford. This one covered his rise to superstardom. The kings of comedy days, the sitcom era, all of it. But as his star kept climbing, the situation at home blew up. The relationship ended in straight chaos. The divorce in 2005 wasn't quiet at all. It was messy, public, a straight-up war. Accusations were flying everywhere. Lawsuits popped up. For a man whose brand was dignity and class, the tabloid headlines were embarrassing as hell. He was being painted like the bad guy in his own story. He lost millions. But worse than the money, he lost his peace. He was the king of comedy, making 20,000 people laugh every night. Then he'd go back to a hotel room and sit there in dead silence, wondering how he could understand crowds so well, but had no clue how to understand his own heart. "I got to a point where I had all the money, all the suits, all the cars, and I was miserable. I was spiritually bankrupt." But the deepest pain was the distance between him and his daughters. For years, there was an icy wall between Steve and the twins. They watched him leave. They watched him build new families. They didn't see a provider. They saw a ghost. The moment they finally reconnected is one of the most powerful, unscripted moments of his life. It didn't happen in a courtroom or a therapist's office. It happened in a simple conversation where Steve had to do the hardest thing a father can do, drop his ego. He looked them straight in the eyes and said, "I'm sorry." No excuses. No business talk. No money talk. Just the truth about the pain his absence caused. Brandy and Carly, now grown women, forgave him. They realized the man they thought had abandoned them was actually a man who nearly destroyed himself trying to give them a life he never had. Healing that bond was the first real step in Steve's emotional comeback. Still, he was missing a partner. 2 divorces deep, carrying a whole lot of baggage, he had accepted being alone. Then destiny spun the block. The story sounds like a movie, but it's real. Back in 1990, at a comedy club in Memphis, Steve was on stage, struggling, unknown, grinding. He looked into the crowd and saw a woman walking to her seat. She was stunning. He literally stopped the show. Dead silence. He looked at her and said into the mic, "I don't know who you are, but I'm going to marry you one day." Her name was Marjorie. They dated for a bit, but life pulled them apart. He was broke. She had her own world. They lost touch. 15 years later, in 2005, after his second divorce left him emotionally wrecked, his bodyguard handed him a phone and said, "I think you need to talk to her." It was Marjorie. They reconnected. And this time, Steve was ready. Not just with money, but with maturity. Marjorie didn't need his cash. She needed a man who showed up. She became the glue, the stabilizer. She took his blended family, his kids, her kids, and made them one unit. She saved him. She brought structure to the madness. She taught him you can't just be a dad who signs checks. You gotta be a dad who's actually there. The change was obvious. The rough edge from the kings of comedy era softened. The anger from the divorce years faded out. Steve Harvey, the man who spent decades running from poverty and the shame of his stutter, finally stopped running. He realized the greatest title he ever earned wasn't king, host, or best-selling author. It was dad and grandpa. With his home life finally solid, something shifted inside him. He'd conquered the world. He'd healed his family. Now he wanted to leave something real behind. Something bigger than entertainment. A roadmap. He started talking less about jokes and more about God. He talked about the philosophy that carried him through the Ford Tempo days. He was ready to deliver his most powerful message, the philosophy of the jump. In 2016, something wild happened. Steve Harvey went viral. Not for a joke, not for a mistake, for a sermon. During a commercial break on Family Feud, cameras were technically off, but someone was recording. Steve felt the weight in the room and decided to speak. He shared the philosophy that saved his life. He called it the jump. God has an amazing life for you, he told them. But you can't get it unless you jump. If you don't jump, your parachute will never open. You'll be safe, you'll be cool, but you'll never soar. The video hit over 100 million views in a week. It landed because it wasn't some celebrity dropping empty motivation. It was a scarred man telling you how he survived. When Steve talks about the parachute, he's not being poetic. He's talking about 1985, about that Ford Tempo, about quitting the factory and walking straight into the unknown. The parachute didn't open right away. He hit the rocks. He got cut. He bled. He starved. But eventually, the wind caught him. That mindset changed everything. He stopped seeing himself as just a comedian and started seeing himself as an elevator. His job wasn't just to make people laugh. It was to lift them up. He launched the Steve and Marjorie Harvey Foundation. This wasn't a tax write-off. This was a rescue mission. He focused on young men from fatherless homes. Boys just like he once was in Cleveland, angry, lost, unheard. Every year, he brings hundreds of boys to his ranch in Georgia. He doesn't just hand out money. He gives them a blueprint. At every camp, there's a moment that hits hard. Steve stands in front of these tough kids who've seen violence, poverty, real pain, and he tells them about his stutter, about the teacher who clowned him, about washing up in gas station bathrooms. He kills the myth of overnight success and tells them straight up, success ain't a straight line. It's a jagged mess of failures you refuse to let define you. At the core of all this is his unapologetic faith. In an industry that dodges religion, Steve Harvey puts it on blast. He gives God full credit for surviving. He always says, "You can't tell my story without God. It don't make math sense." How does a college dropout with a speech impediment become a global media mogul? How does a homeless man become a centimillionaire? How does a man canceled online come back bigger than ever? Steve believes the pain was preparation. The car years weren't punishment, they were training. God stripped him of ego to fill him with purpose. Today, Steve Harvey moves with urgency that scares people half his age. Late 60s, when most folks are thinking retirement, he's launching shows in Africa, investing in tech, expanding into the Middle East. Why? Because he knows the parachute doesn't stay open forever. He lives by this rule: to whom much is given, much is required. He's not chasing money anymore. The cars, suits, planes, they're tools, not trophies. He's working for legacy. He wants to prove it doesn't matter where you start. Coal mines of West Virginia. A stutter. $10 in your pocket. If you've got faith and the guts to jump, the air will catch you. But let's be real, the jump is scary. The jump hurts. And looking back at the rough, painful, beautiful map of his life, Steve has one final truth to share. A truth about what happens after you land. Broderick Stephen Harvey started life with a name nobody knew, in a town the world forgot, with a voice he couldn't control. The kid with the stutter. The factory worker. The drifter sleeping in a freezing car, washing his face in dirty sinks, praying to a God he wasn't even sure was listening. And today he's a monument. Strip away the Emmys, the mansions, the jets, the billions of views. What's left? Who's the man in the mirror when the lights go out? At his core, he's a fighter. A man who took every stone life threw at him and built a castle. This ain't a fairy tale. Fairy tales are luck. Steve Harvey's story is grit. It's the ugly, painful work of refusing to die. It's the audacity to believe a black boy from West Virginia could one day tell the world when to laugh and when to listen. He showed us laughter isn't just a reaction, it's a weapon. It's how we survive our own coal mines. He taught us that even a global, embarrassing mistake isn't a tombstone. It's a stepping stone. And most of all, he taught us that the dream you stuffed in a drawer at 12 years old is still alive, still waiting. But it won't come to you. You gotta go get it. You gotta survive the silence. The cold nights in the Ford Tempo, the betrayal, the mockery, and then you gotta jump. Steve Harvey isn't just the king of comedy anymore. He's the king of reinvention. Proof that your past doesn't decide your future. He once said, "You're never too old to reinvent yourself." Don't wake up 65 and not have done the one thing you wanted to do. He did it. He jumped. And against all odds, the parachute opened. So next time you see him on your screen with that big laugh, remember what it cost. Remember the silence before the sound. And ask yourself, what's your forward tempo? What's your stutter? And are you brave enough to walk on stage anyway? Because the only thing scarier than jumping is standing still.